He thought the forest was sleeping, until the forest itself began to move. He stepped into the mist before dawn, and the world closed around him. The forest swallowed light, sound, and breath. Every leaf shimmered with dew. Every shadow had weight. He was alone, or at least he thought he was. The air was heavy, wet against his skin. He could taste the night on his tongue, moss, mud, and something older, the scent of roots that had never seen the sun. He moved slowly, spear in hand, bare feet silent against the soil. Each step sank into layers of rot and fallen leaves. Beneath him, the ground felt soft, alive. A bird called once in the distance, short, sharp, and then nothing. Silence returned, thick as fog. He listened. Drips of water fell from high above, echoing faintly like slow footsteps. The air trembled with small vibrations, branches rubbing, distant movement, but not wind. The air itself seemed to pulse. He crouched, pressing his palm to the ground. It was damp and trembling, not from quakes or storms, but from something slow, rhythmic, deliberate, a pulse too heavy for any heartbeat. He looked around. The mist moved strangely, curling upward in spirals, as if shaped by breath. Ahead of him, the trees widened. A path, not made by humans, stretched into the darkness. He followed it. Leaves lay broken and crushed in great arcs, some higher than his shoulders. Trunks were split, as though something massive had brushed past without effort. Everywhere he looked, the forest bore the memory of pressure, of weight. He touched a torn vine, thick as his arm. The fibers were frayed and wet, dripping with sap. The smell was sharp, earthy, almost sweet. Fresh. The mark was new. He knelt. The soil beneath the torn vines was pressed deep, shaped into a hollow that held water. He placed his hand inside. The print was vast, the size of his chest, each edge soft but clear. It wasn't a claw, not exactly. It was something broader, something that carried its own ground with it. He froze. The sound came again, far away, yet heavy enough to make the trees tremble. A deep creak, like the sound of wood bending under great strain. He rose, heart racing, eyes searching the mist. The forest ahead shifted. Leaves swayed, but not from wind. The motion came from below, from the earth itself, rising and falling like breath. He stepped closer. The air grew colder. The mist thickened, carrying with it a faint smell of wet fur. A flock of birds erupted somewhere far off, scattering into the gray. And then, silence. He could hear his own heart again. It beat fast, small, fragile against the rhythm of something vast. He reached a clearing. The ground here was torn open, not dug, but pressed apart by weight. Huge ferns lay flattened. Small trees leaned outward, roots exposed like fingers reaching for light. And there, in the middle of the clearing, half hidden by mist, stood the thing. At first, he thought it was a fallen tree, a shape dark and tall, rising out of the fog. But then it moved, slowly. Deliberately, it rose, higher and higher, unfolding from the earth itself. A giant back arched upward, fur glistening with rain. A massive limb reached out, curling around a tree trunk thick as a hut. The tree groaned. Bark splintered. Leaves fell in showers of green and gold. The creature was not roaring. It was not hunting. It was feeding, pulling branches down, tearing leaves gently with its claws. Every motion was slow, careful, ancient. He could see now. Its fur was long and tangled with moss, its back speckled with small plants that had taken root upon it. Its face was blunt, its eyes small and black, reflecting light without emotion, not predator, not prey. Something older, something that had never known fear. The hunter stood frozen, the spear trembling in his grip. He could hear the creature breathe. The sound was enormous, a deep, wet exhale that rolled through the mist like thunder softened by distance. It filled the air, filled his chest, until he felt his own lungs move in rhythm with it. He stepped backward. A twig snapped under his heel. The creature's head turned. Not fast, just enough for him to feel the weight of its attention. Those dark eyes found him through the fog. For a heartbeat, the world stopped breathing. He thought it might charge. He thought it might run, but it only looked. Its nostrils flared once, taking in his scent. Then, with a long sigh, it turned away. The motion was slow, a mountain shifting, a river bending. As it moved, the forest moved with it. Branches brushed its sides. Roots groaned under its weight. The mist followed, curling around its form like a living shroud. It disappeared into the fog, leaving behind silence and the trembling earth. The hunter lowered his spear. His hands shook. He looked at the broken trees, the crushed leaves, the prints filling slowly with rain. Nothing had attacked him. Nothing had chased him. But the fear remained, not of death, but of insignificance. He understood then. This creature did not belong to his world. He belonged to its. He turned back toward camp, moving through the mist like a ghost. Behind him, deep within the forest, came a sound so faint he almost missed it. A single, slow exhale. The forest was breathing again, and though he could not see it, he knew the creature was still there, watching, listening, waiting for the world to fall silent once more. Days of quiet breath before the world changed. Morning came not with light, but with breath. The mist rose from the valley floor like smoke from a sleeping fire. It curled between the trees, slid along the river, and clung to the bodies of those who lived within it. The tribe of the Valley of Mist. Their huts were made of ferns and branches, small and round, hidden beneath giant palms. When the wind passed, the leaves whispered like voices speaking from before memory. They woke to the sound of dripping, water falling from leaves into bowls of carved stone. Each drop marked time in this world without sun or shadow. The tribe moved slowly through the gray morning. Mothers gathered fruit from the low vines. Their children chased insects that glowed faintly in the damp air. Hunters sharpened stone blades, the sound of flint against bone echoing softly. Every breath carried the taste of wet soil. Every step left a print that filled instantly with water. The valley was their home, but also their cage. The mountains that surrounded it were covered in green mist that never lifted. The sky was always hidden, the sun reduced to a pale glow filtered through the endless canopy. No one had ever seen the world beyond. But life persisted here, quiet and patient. Fish moved through shallow pools between roots. Ferns unrolled like tongues tasting the air. The people had learned to live as the forest lived, without hurry, without sound, with reverence. Yet that morning felt different. Something in the rhythm had shifted. The mist moved heavier. The air felt thicker, and the forest, though full of life, felt awake. The hunters noticed first. They returned from the higher ridges carrying not prey, but broken branches, trunks as wide as a man's chest, splintered halfway up their height. They placed them at the edge of camp, unsure whether to speak. And Kalen, the oldest among them, crouched beside the wood. He touched the break, smooth, curved, not torn by teeth. He ran his fingers along the grooves and frowned. "These trees did not fall," he said softly. "They were moved." The tribe grew quiet. Moved. By what? They followed him into the forest later that day. The mist was thicker there, the air heavy with the scent of resin. Each step brought new signs. Bark peeled from trunks, vines twisted and broken. The ground pressed into shallow hollows large enough to swallow a man whole. They found fruit crushed underfoot, not eaten but stepped on. Leaves the size of their chests, stripped from trees and dropped in piles. And always, the same strange pattern. Circles pressed into the earth, as though made by something that walked not on hooves or paws, but columns. No one spoke. The forest seemed to listen. A bird called once, and even that sound seemed frightened to exist. When the mist thinned for a heartbeat, and Kalen saw it, not the creature, but its passing. A branch moved, not by wind, but by weight. Somewhere deeper in the trees, something vast shifted. The movement was slow, almost graceful. Leaves fell in waves, drifting to the ground like rain without sound. He felt no threat in it, only presence. Something ancient. Something that had walked this land long before their tribe, long before men even knew fear. They returned to camp before nightfall. The valley glowed faintly now. Bioluminescent fungi lit the roots like embers. The air hummed with frogs and the soft croaks of creatures unseen. Children sat close to the fire, eyes wide as Nkalen spoke. He did not describe a monster. He described movement, slow, deliberate, patient. The forest walks, he said, not to hunt, not to flee. It walks to remember itself. The younger hunters exchanged uneasy glances. They had lived their whole lives believing they were the top of the world, clever, armed, masters of fire. But the thought of something larger, slower, older than their tools, made the flames seem small. Rain began to fall. Not hard, soft, steady, endless. The fire hissed and shrank to embers. Steam rose from their skin as they huddled together for warmth. All night, the sound of water on leaves filled the air. But beneath it, faint, rhythmic, came another sound. Like the heartbeat of the land, slow, measured, deep. It came from far away, beyond the ridge, where the mist never lifted. Each pulse was followed by silence, as if the forest listened to its own breathing. Nkalen lay awake, his eyes open to the pale glow of the rain. He remembered stories told by his grandfather of the first days, when the land was soft and alive, when mountains walked and trees bent to drink from the sky. He had never believed them, until now. When morning came, the valley was drenched. Mist hung low, heavy enough to taste. The tribe emerged from their huts, their feet sinking into new mud. The youngest boy, Sira, pointed toward the river. There, on the far bank, a tree lay broken, not fallen by wind, but pushed. The prints around it were deep, enormous, filled with clear water from the night's rain. The edges glistened, smooth and perfect. The boy stepped closer. He placed his hand into one of the depressions. It swallowed his entire arm. He looked back, eyes wide with wonder. "It's warm," he whispered. Nkalen knelt beside him. The earth indeed was warm, faintly, as if it still held the body heat of whatever had passed. Steam rose from the puddles, blurring the edges of the tracks. He looked across the valley, where the mist shifted like breath. A shape moved far away, huge, slow, silent. It vanished again before the others could see, but the air told the truth. The forest smelled different now, alive in a way that frightened and fascinated. That evening, they built their fires closer together. The flames danced weakly, struggling against the damp. No one spoke much. Even the children were quiet, their small faces turned toward the darkness beyond the huts. Something vast was near, and though it had done them no harm, the world felt changed. The tribe sensed that they had stepped into someone else's dream, a dream made of roots and rain and breath too deep to measure. As the night fell again, the mist thickened, swallowing the camp in silver. The forest exhaled once more, slow and steady, and the narrator's voice, ancient, soft, closes the moment. They thought they lived within the forest, but the forest lived within them. And when it moved, their hearts moved with it. When silence learned to speak. The rain had passed, but the forest remained wet, soaked in mist and memory. Every leaf dripped, every sound was swallowed, even the birds had grown quiet. The tribe moved carefully that morning. Their fire had died in the night, drowned by the rain. Smoke no longer marked their camp, only a faint smell of ash clinging to the air. The valley felt different. The ground was softer. The trees leaned as if listening. Taro, one of the youngest hunters, walked ahead with a spear of blackened wood. His feet sank into the mud with soft sounds, each step leaving a perfect print that filled instantly with water. He stopped when he saw the tracks again, not his own. Wider, deeper, each one a crater. He knelt and brushed away the leaves that had fallen overnight. The prints were fresh, the edges sharp, the water still trembling inside. Steam curled upward from them, faint and warm. He felt heat on his palm, not from the ground, from what had touched it. He looked up. The trees here were bent in arcs, their branches stripped bare to impossible heights. A faint hum vibrated through the soil. Not sound, vibration. The memory of motion that had already passed. He called to the others, his voice small against the weight of air. They gathered around the prince, 5 hunters, breathing in unison, each afraid to disturb what lay beneath. No one spoke. Speech felt wrong here, like shouting in a place meant for prayer. The mist thickened. Light faded. The forest's breath grew louder. It wasn't the wind. It was something deeper, the slow inhale of a living world. Nicalan raised a hand. "Listen," he whispered. They all listened. Far off, through the tangle of trunks, came a sound, not a roar, not a step, but a long, low exhale. It rolled through the air like thunder smothered in moss. The sound moved the mist itself, bending it outward before pulling it back in again. Every living thing froze. The hunters pressed their hands to the earth. The ground quivered, once, twice, then settled. Nicalan's face changed. It wasn't fear that filled his eyes now. It was awe. He whispered, "The earth breathes beneath us." They followed the sound, step by step. They entered deeper into the forest where light could not reach. Here, everything was larger, the roots like walls, the vines thick as arms. The air smelled of resin and decay and rain. Droplets clung to every surface, turning the world into 1,000 mirrors. Time lost meaning there. Their steps became slower, softer. Even their breathing matched the rhythm of the forest, that deep, heavy pulse. Then they found it. At first, it was only a hill of vines and leaves, half covered in moss, a mound so enormous it seemed part of the land itself. But the vines on its surface moved, just slightly. The hunters froze. The mist swirled, and from the mound came a sound, a long, deep inhale. The vines shifted again. It wasn't a hill, it was a body. The realization passed through them like lightning made of silence. They stepped back slowly, their spears trembling. The creature was lying down, half hidden beneath the canopy, its back covered in layers of moss and fern. Birds perched on it, picking insects from its fur. Small frogs rested in the hollows of its skin. It looked like the forest had grown upon it, as if time itself had tried to keep it secret. And yet, it moved. Its chest rose, slowly, lifting the air with it. A sound escaped from its throat. Not pain, not hunger, just breath. The hunter stood there for what felt like forever. The creature didn't move again, but the forest did, bending gently each time it inhaled. Then, something changed. A branch snapped behind them. A bird fled, crying once before vanishing. The giant stirred. The movement was slow, the movement of something that had never needed to hurry. Its massive arm rose, scattering leaves like rainfall. Its claws, long, curved, dull at the tips, brushed against the ground. It pulled itself forward a few steps, and the sound of its weight filled the air like thunder rolling through the soil. The hunters backed away, hearts pounding. Taro stumbled and fell, his hand sinking into one of the creature's footprints. The ground was still warm. He looked up. For the first time, he saw its face. It wasn't a face made for rage. It was soft, covered in fur, the eyes small and black, deep with calm. It blinked once, slowly. The mist around it swirled in rhythm with its breath. Nicalan whispered again, "It's not hunting." But the creature had already turned its head toward them. Its nostrils flared. Its gaze held them like gravity itself. And for a moment, the world felt ancient beyond comprehension. Not past, not future, just being. The sloth's massive paw rested on the ground, its claws carving shallow furrows into the mud. It leaned slightly forward. The hunters didn't wait. They turned and ran. Branches tore at their arms. Vines ripped at their legs. The forest roared back to life. Birds screaming, frogs leaping, leaves raining down in chaos. Behind them, the ground trembled. Once, twice, not in pursuit, but in reaction. The creature had stood up. Through the trees, they caught glimpses of it, a silhouette against the mist, vast and impossible. It didn't chase them. It simply moved, rising to its full height to reach the canopy above. The earth shuddered beneath its weight. Tree trunks cracked. Ferns bent flat. The forest itself seemed to bow. And then, silence again. When the hunters reached the ridge above the valley, they turned back. The mist had swallowed everything. Only the tops of trees remained visible, shifting gently, as if breathing. Taro's voice was shaking when he spoke. "It didn't attack," he said. "It could have crushed us, but it didn't." Nicolin nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the mist. "It is not like the others," he said. "It does not live to hunt. It lives to be." They stood there until the sun began to set, the light turning the mist gold. From deep within the forest came one last sound, the same slow exhale that had haunted their dreams. It was not a warning. It was a farewell. As they turned to leave, the forest seemed to sigh again, as though satisfied. And the narrator's voice, quiet, reverent, closes the moment. In that breath, they heard the oldest truth. Not all that is vast seeks to harm. Some are simply too old to notice our fear. The day the forest stood on its feet. The next morning, the mist burned slower than usual. Light pressed weakly through the canopy, turning every drop of dew into a shard of gold. The forest seemed quiet, too quiet, as if every sound waited for permission to exist again. The hunters had not slept. They sat near the cold ashes of their fire, eyes hollow, skin shining with dampness. No one spoke of what they had seen, but silence itself carried memory. They knew the creature was still there, somewhere in the folds of the valley, breathing the same air, watching from behind curtains of leaves. Each of them felt it, that invisible presence that made the forest pulse like a living heart. And Kalen stood slowly. "We must see it again," he said. His voice was not a command. It was an inevitability. Taro looked at him. "It is not our prey." "No," Kalen answered, "but it is part of our world now, and the world is changing." They gathered their spears, though none wanted to use them. Even the air seemed to resist movement. Every motion felt heavy, deliberate. They followed the same trail as before, the crushed ferns, the fallen trees, the footprints deep as graves. The morning light stretched thin across the ground, cutting between the trunks like liquid fire. Insects swarmed where the beast had passed, drawn to the sweetness of crushed fruit and sap. As they descended into the lower valley, they smelled it before they saw it, a scent of moss and wet fur, of earth freshly overturned. It was not unpleasant. It smelled like life itself. Then the forest opened. There it stood, the giant ground sloth, awake, moving. Its body filled the clearing, its shoulders taller than the tallest tree trunks. Its fur shimmered gold in the filtered light, thick with mud and leaves. Small birds danced around it, landing on its back to feed on insects. It reached upward, pulling down an entire branch, eating slowly. Each movement seemed to take minutes. Its claws curved like scythes, but moved with careful grace, stripping leaves without breaking the wood. The hunters froze. Their breath fogged the air in front of them. Even their hearts seemed to hesitate, afraid to beat too loud. The creature turned its head, slowly, and the forest tilted with it. It looked directly at them. Its eyes were black and deep, reflecting not rage but thought, as if it recognized something. It made a sound then, a long, resonant hum that vibrated through the earth. Not a growl, not a roar. It was the sound of wind trapped in a cavern, the voice of distance itself. The hunters trembled. Taro lowered his spear. "It's speaking," he whispered. Nicolin raised a hand, signaling stillness. The creature tilted its head, the gesture strangely human, curious. Then it stepped closer. Each step was a tremor. Leaves jumped. The air thickened. But its movement was slow, careful, gentle, deliberate, like it feared to crush the ground. The hunters stepped back, their feet sinking in mud. One of them, younger, panicked. He lifted his spear. "Don't," Taro hissed. But fear is older than reason. The spear flew. It struck the creature's shoulder. Not deep, not deadly, but enough to draw a sound from its chest, a sound so low and vast it shook the bones of the world. It reared up. Its full height blotted out the canopy. Branches snapped, birds scattered, the light vanished. Its arms spread wide, claws catching the morning light like blades of molten stone. The air exploded with the sound of breaking trees. The hunters fell to their knees, covering their heads. But the creature didn't attack. It only swayed, as though in pain, its massive head turning, its chest heaving with heavy breath. The forest wept leaves around it. Dust and pollen rained from the canopy, catching the golden light until the whole clearing glowed. A storm of gold and silence. And Kalen rose slowly, palms open. He stepped forward, unarmed. The creature looked down at him. Its eyes were wide, ancient, bewildered, not by pain, but by the existence of something so small and sudden as a weapon. He raised his hand toward it, slowly, as one might reach toward fire. His fingers brushed the air between them. The creature lowered its head slightly, breath washing over him like hot rain. The smell was deep, earth, sap, time. Nikalin whispered, "We are not your enemies." It blinked. Once. Then it turned away. Its enormous body shifted, shoulders rolling under waves of fur. It limped slightly, the spear still lodged in its side. Each step made the trees lean. It walked toward the river. The hunters followed at a distance, too afraid to intervene, too awed to flee. The ground vibrated beneath them, the rhythm slow and steady, the heartbeat of something eternal. When it reached the water, it stopped. Its reflection rippled across the surface, distorted by the current. It stood there, half submerged, washing its wound with slow, deliberate motion. The spear loosened and fell, vanishing into the riverbed. The creature turned its head once more toward the humans. Its eyes glimmered, not with fear, not with rage, only acknowledgement. And then it lay down, half in the water, half on land. The river flowed around it like veins returning blood to the earth. Taro stepped forward now, unable to stop himself. He approached the edge of the river until he could feel its breath again. The creature's side rose and fell, slow as the tide. Its fur was thick, heavy, tangled with reeds and moss. He touched it. The warmth surprised him. It was not the warmth of an animal, but of something deeper, like touching the ground after lightning. For a long time, nothing moved. The forest held its breath. Then the creature exhaled one final time, a sigh that shook the leaves and bent the light, and with it came peace, a silence that felt sacred. Taro stepped back. He looked at Nkalin. The old man's eyes were wet, his lips trembling with words he could not form. Behind them, the other hunters emerged slowly, eyes wide with reverence. They had not seen death. They had seen surrender, a creature too vast for violence, returning to the stillness that had birthed it. As the sun broke through the mist, its rays touched the surface of the river, turning the water gold, turning the fur of the fallen Colossus into flame. And in that light, for a moment, the forest itself seemed to kneel. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. The wind shifted, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of moss and water and memory. Leaves drifted down like ash. The giant's body began to sink slowly, not with weight, but with grace, as if the earth had opened its arms to welcome it home. Taro watched until the water swallowed its shape. Only ripples remained, circles spreading outward, soft and endless. He fell to his knees, hands pressed to the ground. It still trembled faintly, the echo of life leaving. And in that trembling, he heard the same slow rhythm that had guided the forest. A rhythm older than fear, older than time. The narrator's voice fades into the wind. They had faced no monster, no god, no legend. They had faced the weight of existence itself, and learned that not all greatness roars. Some simply breathe. When compassion was born in the smoke. The sky darkened before noon. The light faded not because of night, but because of storm. Clouds pressed low over the valley, swallowing the tips of the trees. The air grew thick and metallic, the taste of thunder before it spoke. The tribe gathered near the ridge, silent. No one hunted, no one sang. They simply watched the sky. Beneath them, the forest waited. It looked calm from afar, a sea of green and mist. But deep inside, the body of the great creature lay hidden beneath the river, its shape now part of the water's slow rhythm. Days had passed since its fall, and yet the earth still trembled faintly, as if remembering. Taro sat by the ashes of an old fire, the damp smoke rising weakly into the wind. He held a stone in his hand, sharp, polished, unused. He turned it over and over, watching droplets slide across its surface. He thought of the creature's eyes, how it had looked at him, not as prey, not as threat, but as something equal. That look had burned into him, deeper than fear. He had not spoken since that day. When the first thunder cracked across the sky, the tribe flinched. The sound rolled through the valley like the creature's breath returning. Wind rushed down from the hills, carrying with it the smell of ozone and wet bark. Then came the rain. It began softly, a whisper among leaves, then grew until it was a roar. The forest vanished behind curtains of gray. The air turned cold, heavy, alive. They took shelter under rocks and trees, watching as the valley below blurred into silver. Lightning flashed, white veins tearing across the sky. Each flash revealed the world for an instant, and in one of them, Taro saw it. Far below, through the rain and smoke, a flicker of fire. Orange, unnatural, alive. He rose to his feet. Fire in the rain. The tribe murmured, uneasy. Fire did not live long in storms. If it burned for a reason. Nkalen met Taro's gaze and nodded. They took spears and torches, though the torches were useless, and began to descend. The rain was relentless. Water streamed down their faces, their bodies glistening like stone. The path was slick and treacherous, roots twisting underfoot. As they neared the valley floor, the smell reached them. Not the sweet smoke of their hearths, but the bitter, choking scent of burning wood and flesh. The fire was real. A bolt of lightning had struck one of the oldest trees, a giant, hollowed by time, and it had burst like dry tinder. The flame spread across the undergrowth, feeding on dry leaves, oil-rich vines, and fallen trunks. Despite the rain, the blaze crawled and hissed, clinging to the forest like a fever that refused to die. The air shimmered with heat. The world flickered between gold and gray, firelight and stormlight, and through it all, they heard a sound. Low, pained, familiar. Taro froze. Nkalen turned toward the sound, eyes wide. The creature, it was alive. The great sloth moved through the haze, slow, staggering, its fur alight in places where burning branches had fallen. Its back smoked. The moss that had once covered it now burned like dry cloth. It carried fire with it, not by will, but by accident. A walking pyre of the forest itself. It made no sound of anger, only a groan, long and deep, like stone cracking under weight. The hunters dropped their spears. They could not fight what was already dying. Taro ran forward before the others could stop him. The rain lashed his face. Heat rose in waves. He pushed through the smoke until he stood before the beast once more. The creature had reached the river's edge. It moved into the water, steam rising in great clouds as the flames met the current. Its fur sizzled. Its breath came in ragged waves. Taro waded in after it. The water was warm, dark with ash. He picked up a branch, scooping river water with it, and threw it against the beast's side. Again and again. The fire hissed. The smoke thickened. The smell of burnt moss filled the air. The creature lowered itself into the river. Half of its body sank. The other half remained on the shore, motionless. The rain fell harder, beating against its skin. Taro climbed onto a rock beside it. He reached out, hand trembling, and touched the fur. It was hot, too hot, but soft beneath the burned patches. He whispered, not knowing why, "You are the forest." The creature's head turned slightly, eyes half open. They reflected the lightning above, not with fear, but with peace. It exhaled, slow, heavy. Steam rose from its nostrils, mingling with rain. Then its chest stopped moving. The sound of rain filled the silence it left behind. The fire hissed once more and died. Smoke curled upward like breath leaving the world. The hunters joined him, standing at the edge of the river. They looked at the giant, now still, its shape half hidden by the water and the fog. Nkalen knelt and placed a hand on Taro's shoulder. He did not speak. He did not need to. Together, they began to clear the burned branches, pulling them away from the creature's body, working through the night while the storm raged above them. They tore down vines and laid them over the wounds, not as burial, not as tribute, but as an instinct, to cover what should not be left bare. The rain washed over them, turning soot to rivers that flowed back into the soil. The smell of smoke faded. Only the scent of wet earth remained. When dawn came, the forest was quiet again. Steam rose from the ground like ghosts returning to the sky. The creature lay beneath a blanket of leaves and vines, its shape softened by the mist. The tribe stood in a circle around it. No words were said. They simply breathed, in, out, the same rhythm they had learned from the forest, the same rhythm that had belonged to the creature. Nkalen took a piece of charcoal from the fire that had once burned the valley. He drew on the ground. Not the creature's body, not its face, but a pattern, a spiral, a slow, endless curve, the shape of its breath. He pointed to it and said softly, "This is what remains." Taro nodded. He took some of the ashes from the creature's fur and pressed them into the spiral, dark against the wet earth. Then he rubbed them between his palms, letting the rain wash them away. For the first time, the tribe did not see fire as hunger, nor rain as fear. They saw them as the same, two halves of a cycle, life and end, heat and release. The narrator's voice returns, ancient, low, heavy with emotion. That night, they learned that mercy burns brighter than flame, that compassion can outlive thunder, and that even the giants of the earth fall gently when touched by kindness. The rain slowed. The sky brightened. The first light of dawn fell across the water, turning the river gold once more. The creature's body gleamed faintly beneath the surface, not as flesh, but as reflection, and in that reflection, the humans saw themselves for the first time, small, fragile, but capable of grace. They turned away, leaving the valley behind. Smoke rose in thin columns from where the fire had died, curling upward like prayers. Behind them, the forest exhaled, long, deep, eternal. And the world learned the weight of gentleness. Morning came slowly. The storm had gone, but its voice lingered, a faint rumble beyond the hills, fading like a heartbeat too tired to continue. Mist clung to the ground, pale and luminous, the breath of a forest waking after pain. The tribe stood where the river curved, their bodies outlined in the new light. Behind them, smoke drifted upward in thin, white ribbons, rising through the gaps in the canopy, like memories leaving the earth. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say, only breath. The water was calm now. No ash, no flame, only reflection. The surface shimmered with morning light, and beneath it, shapes of leaves and roots twisted in slow motion, as if the forest itself was dreaming. Nkalen walked to the riverbank and knelt. He cupped his hands, lifted the water and let it fall back through his fingers. It glittered for a moment, catching sunlight, and in that small shimmer, he thought he saw fur, a memory of gold beneath the surface. He smiled, not from joy, but from understanding. The forest was still, utterly still, yet alive in every particle of air. Taro approached him, his hair damp, his eyes hollow with awe. He carried nothing, no spear, no fire, no stone, only a handful of green leaves, freshly grown from a burned branch. He placed them on the water. The current carried them away, slow and gentle. They watched as the leaves floated downstream, turning slowly, spinning like thoughts returning to silence. Behind them, the tribe began to move, packing hides, gathering fruit, preparing to leave. They would not stay in this place. Some lands are not meant to be lived in. They are meant to be remembered. The air smelled different now. It no longer carried the weight of smoke, but the sweetness of renewal, sap, rain, and soil reborn. Sunlight poured through the canopy, revealing colors that had been hidden for days, the bright orange of ferns, the green veins of moss, the shimmer of insects returning to dance. The earth itself seemed softer, forgiving. As they began their ascent out of the valley, Taro turned one last time. The mist parted for a moment, just enough to show him the place where the creature had fallen. No body remained, only a wide circle of flattened earth, already covered in new shoots. Tiny plants growing from the soil enriched by its weight. The forest had reclaimed what was once its own. He watched as a bird landed on one of the shoots, a small, fragile creature, and began to sing. The sound was thin, trembling, pure. It rose into the mist and vanished. For the first time since the storm, Taro smiled. He turned back toward the path. The climb was steep, but light touched every step. At the ridge, Nkalen waited. He looked down upon the valley one final time. The mist pulsed like a living thing, and for a fleeting second, it seemed to move, slowly, rhythmically, as if breathing again. He whispered to himself, "The forest remembers." Then he turned and followed the others. They moved in silence, their shadows stretching long across the mountain's spine. Each carried a piece of the story, not in their hands, but in their hearts. The story of the Gentle Colossus, the one that had shown them the meaning of stillness. When they reached the plains beyond the hills, the world opened wide again, the horizon endless, the sky clear for the first time in many days. The sun hung low, vast and golden. The air was dry now, filled with warmth. Their footprints left faint marks in the soft ground, marks that would soon be erased by wind and time. But somewhere, in the soil beneath their feet, the memory of what had happened would remain, not in bones, not in ashes, but in growth, in the roots of new trees, in the calm between storms. The narrator's voice becomes softer, older, like an echo spoken by the earth itself. They thought they had lost a creature, but what they found was the world again, in its silence, in its patience, in its breath. The wind rose gently, carrying the scent of rain far behind them. The plains shimmered with heat, and as they walked onward, a faint sound drifted from the forest behind, a low hum, deep and eternal. It was not the creature's voice. It was the forest's, alive, whole, remembering. The camera of memory pulls upward, the tribe reduced to small dots against the vast landscape. The forest below glimmering under sunlight, green, gold, and infinite. The narrator's final words come like a whisper through time. From the breath of giants, humanity learned gentleness. From their fall, it learned to stand. A pause. And that's how humanity survived. Once again,